Judge ordered to take a 7-year-old girl from her beloved grandmother and place her in the custody of her uncle and aunt. But when the girl started testifying, everyone was stunned. Brenda White walked slowly toward the courtroom, her hands trembling as she held the small fingers of her 7-year-old granddaughter, Olivia. The little girl, who had lost her parents, had found comfort only in her grandmother, who had become her only support. Olivia's parents, Eva and Martin, had always tried to create an atmosphere of love and care for her. The family lived in a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood, mornings filled with the smell of pancakes, evening walks in the park, bedtime stories. These were all part of their daily lives. But everything changed in one tragic moment. It was a regular Friday. Martin was rushing to work, and Eva was getting ready to pick Olivia up from daycare. That afternoon, they had planned to spend the evening together as usual. However, life sometimes changes plans in the cruelest ways. Late that night, Brenda White heard a knock at the door. Standing on her doorstep were two police officers. Their faces were serious, their voices heavy. "We have some tragic news to share," one of them began. "Your daughter and her husband were in a car accident." Brenda felt her world stop. Her heart seemed to skip a beat. "What happened to them?" she asked, her voice shaking. The officer lowered his gaze. "We did everything we could, but we couldn't save them. The accident was caused by a truck driver who fell asleep at the wheel and veered into oncoming traffic. Martin and Eva were driving home from dinner with friends. They had no chance to react. The impact was too severe." That night, Olivia had been staying at her grandmother's house, unaware of what had happened. Brenda, gathering all her strength, held the little girl close and whispered, "I will always be with you, my little one." For a long time, Olivia couldn't understand why her mom and dad never came to pick her up. Brenda told her that they were now in heaven, watching over her like angels. But every night, Olivia still cried into her pillow, hoping they would come back. Brenda White did everything she could to help her granddaughter cope with the loss. She took her in, filling the home with warmth and love despite her own grief. Olivia clung to her grandmother, finding comfort in her, even though a part of her heart was forever broken. The tragedy changed everything, but Brenda made a promise to herself and to her late daughter that she would do everything in her power to make sure Olivia felt loved and protected no matter what. Despite the cold that day, Brenda White felt like she was standing in the eye of a storm. She knew that this hearing would be the most important moment of her life. As she entered the courtroom, her eyes immediately fell on the judge, known for her strict but fair reputation. The judge was deeply focused on the documents in front of her, her expression serious. On the other side of the room sat Olivia's uncle and aunt, Austin and Jennifer, dressed impeccably and radiating confidence in their victory. Austin and Jennifer Hall, Martin's brother and his wife, had always appeared to be the perfect couple. Austin was a successful businessman who owned a chain of high-end stores, while Jennifer was a university professor with an active social life. Their home was spacious, filled with expensive furniture, a landscaped garden, and even a swimming pool. At first glance, they seemed like the epitome of stability and success. But beneath the polished exterior, there was a coldness and calculation that even 7-year-old Olivia could sense. After Olivia's parents died, Austin and Jennifer started appearing in her life more often. They never showed genuine care for the child, but they pretended to be helpful to Brenda White. That day, their confidence only deepened Brenda's growing sense of unease. The uncle and aunt's lawyer began his statement. "Your Honor, my clients only want what's best for their niece. They have the resources, stability, and a suitable environment to provide her with a life that, unfortunately, Brenda White simply cannot offer." Brenda White pressed her lips together tightly and lowered her gaze. Every word from the lawyer felt like a knife to the heart. Her love for her granddaughter had been reduced to a question of money. The judge looked up. "Brenda White, I understand that you have been Olivia's primary guardian since her parents' passing. Can you explain how you plan to provide for her well-being in the future?" Brenda White struggled to stand, gripping the edge of the table for support so her legs wouldn't fail her. "Your Honor," she began, her voice trembling but firm, "it's true that I don't have much money, but what I do have is love. I will do everything in my power to care for Olivia. She doesn't need luxury. She needs someone who genuinely loves her and will always be there for her. A soft murmur spread through the courtroom. Austin and Jennifer exchanged confident glances, as if they had already won. The lawyer quickly intervened. With all due respect, Your Honor, love doesn't pay for education, medical care, or the emotional stability a child needs. Austin is a successful businessman, and Jennifer is a university professor. What can this elderly grandmother offer? The judge motioned for Brenda White to respond, but before she could speak, Olivia tugged on her hand. Grandma, can I say something? The courtroom fell silent. The judge looked at Olivia with interest. Olivia, do you want to say something? Olivia nodded confidently and let go of her grandmother's hand. She stood up straight. I want to stay with Grandma, she declared in a loud, clear voice. She hugs me when I'm scared and sings to me when I can't sleep. Uncle and Aunt say they want to take care of me, but they don't even know what my favorite food is. A whisper of astonishment rippled through the courtroom. Austin and Jennifer shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The judge remained composed and turned to the lawyers. We will take a 30-minute recess. I need to review additional documents. Brenda White took Olivia's hand firmly and led her out into the hallway. Her heart swelled with pride for her granddaughter, but at the same time, she was filled with fear. Would this be enough to convince the judge? In the hallway, a man approached Brenda, someone she had never seen before. He was a court assistant, holding a folder with confidential documents. Brenda White, he said in a low voice, there's something you need to know. Brenda frowned. What is it? Is something wrong? The man hesitated before speaking. I can't say much, but while reviewing some documents related to Austin and Jennifer, I noticed that something doesn't add up. If you need help, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Before Brenda could respond, the man quickly walked away, leaving her with a flood of unanswered questions. What could this seemingly perfect family be hiding? As they returned to the courtroom, Brenda White looked at the judge with newfound determination. She didn't know what was going on, but she could sense that this case was more complicated than it seemed. The sound of the judge's gavel echoed through the room, signaling the continuation of the hearing. Brenda White took her seat, her mind racing with the court assistant's words. Something doesn't add up. Austin and Jennifer's lawyer wasted no time. Your Honor, I would like to present additional evidence of the stable and supportive environment my clients can provide for Olivia. Here are photographs of their home, a spacious estate with a garden, swimming pool, and a room specifically designed for a child. In addition, they have a steady income that guarantees Olivia access to quality education. The lawyer placed the photos on the judge's desk, and she studied them carefully. Meanwhile, Brenda White watched Austin and Jennifer closely. Something about their demeanor unsettled her. Their expressions were cold, their actions calculated, as if this hearing was just a formality they had to get through. The judge looked up. Mr. and Mrs. Hall, how do you plan to build an emotional connection with Olivia, given that you have never lived with her before? Jennifer responded with a rehearsed smile. Your Honor, we have tried to bond with Olivia since her parents' passing, but Brenda White has limited our contact. We are confident that over time, with the stability we can offer, Olivia will learn to trust us and love us as her new guardians. Brenda White felt a tight knot form in her stomach. Yes, she had limited their access to Olivia, but not out of selfishness. She had always sensed their insincerity. Her intuition told her that behind their perfect image, something dark was lurking. At that moment, Brenda's lawyer, a sharp and perceptive young man named Darren Keat, stood up. Your Honor, with your permission, I would like to ask Olivia's aunt and uncle a few questions. The judge nodded. Proceed. Darren walked to the witness stand with a confident, steady stride. Mr. Austin, you say you only want what's best for Olivia. Can you tell me the last time you visited her before this legal process began? Austin hesitated for a moment, but quickly regained his composure. About 6 months ago. Darren raised an eyebrow. 6 months? So you haven't seen her for half the time she has been in her grandmother's care. Do you believe this lack of contact strengthens your case as the best candidates for guardianship? Austin opened his mouth to answer, but Jennifer cut in. We were busy preparing the necessary legal paperwork for this process. Our intentions have always been in her best interest. Darren gave a slight smile, as if he had anticipated this response. So, you're saying that legal formalities were more important to you than spending time with Olivia? Jennifer's face paled slightly, but before she could respond, the judge intervened. Counselor, please keep your questions specific and relevant. Of course, Your Honor, Darren replied, returning to his seat. Brenda White looked at her lawyer with gratitude. His questions, though simple, exposed the emotional divide between Olivia and her uncle and aunt. However, just when the grandmother started to feel hopeful, Austin and Jennifer's lawyer requested permission to present unexpected evidence. Your Honor, we have invited a social worker to assess the living conditions in which Olivia resides with her grandmother. Her report indicates that the current environment does not meet the optimal conditions for the child's development. The words struck the grandmother like a bolt of lightning. A middle-aged woman with a serious expression stood up and took the witness stand. I visited Brenda White's home. While it is evident that the child shares a strong emotional bond with her grandmother, the household lacks basic resources such as appropriate furniture and sufficient space for the proper development of a school-age child. Darren immediately stood up. With all due respect, could you clarify what you mean by basic resources? The social worker frowned. Olivia's room contains only a bed and a small shelf with a few books. There are no educational toys or a proper study space. Darren nodded and continued. During your visit, did you observe Brenda White interacting with Olivia? Yes, the woman answered. How would you describe their relationship? Darren inquired. The social worker hesitated before replying. They seem very close. Darren smiled. So, while financial resources may be limited, emotional support and love are present? The social worker slowly nodded. That's a fair interpretation, but thank you. That will be all, Darren interrupted before she could finish. As the social worker left the stand, Brenda White felt a small sense of relief. However, she suddenly recalled the words of the court assistant. Something didn't add up. Perhaps he was right. The judge announced a recess for further review of the evidence. But then a man in an expensive suit entered the courtroom. He quickly approached Austin and Jennifer's lawyer, whispering something in his ear. Brenda noticed how Austin and Jennifer's faces turned pale. The judge took notice. Is there a problem? Their lawyer quickly shook his head. No, Your Honor, nothing that would impact this hearing. But Brenda White saw it clearly. Something had unsettled them. After the recess, the tension in the courtroom was even more palpable. Brenda watched as Jennifer and Austin exchanged nervous glances while their lawyer frantically flipped through documents, as if searching for a way out. Brenda leaned toward Darren and whispered, Did you notice how their behavior changed? Yes, Darren nodded, keeping his eyes locked on the opposition. I think they're hiding something. If we uncover it, this case could take an unexpected turn. The judge returned to her seat and announced, The hearing will continue. Darren Keat, do you wish to present additional evidence? Darren stood up, took a deep breath, and stepped toward the podium. Your Honor, I would like Olivia to testify. It is important to hear her perspective on this matter. A murmur of surprise spread through the courtroom. Austin and Jennifer looked alarmed. Their lawyer immediately objected. I object, Your Honor. Olivia is too young to grasp the full extent of this case. Subjecting her to this kind of emotional pressure would be unfair. The judge raised her hand, calling for silence. Darren Keat, are you certain this is necessary? Yes, Your Honor, Darren responded firmly. I believe Olivia's voice is crucial. She is the one whose life will be most affected by this decision. Her testimony could shed light on the situation. The judge pondered for a moment before agreeing. Very well. Olivia may enter the courtroom, provided that all present show respect and remain silent. Brenda White's heart began to race. She knew Olivia was a smart girl, but she worried about how the stress might affect her. A few minutes later, the door opened, and Olivia walked in, holding the court assistant's hand. Her face was serious, but there was a determination in her eyes that surprised everyone. The judge smiled warmly at the girl and spoke in a gentle tone. Hello, Olivia. Don't worry. We just want to talk with you for a little while, okay? Olivia slowly nodded. Yes, Your Honor. The judge asked a few general questions to put the girl at ease, then moved to the main point. How do you feel living with your grandmother? Olivia's face lit up with a smile. I love living with Grandma. She takes care of me and tells me beautiful stories before bed. The judge nodded. Do you feel safe and happy with her? Yes, Olivia replied confidently. Austin and Jennifer's lawyer, visibly uncomfortable, asked for permission to question the girl. The judge allowed it but gave him a warning glance. Olivia, sweetheart, have you ever felt like you were missing something? Maybe toys or a bigger space to play? Olivia tilted her head thoughtfully. Grandma doesn't have many toys, but that doesn't matter. She always comes up with fun games and we go to the park together. The lawyer forced a smile, but it was obvious he was dissatisfied with her answer. Thank you, Olivia, that's all. Darren seized the moment to ask his question. Olivia, can you tell us if you spent time with Uncle Austin and Aunt Jennifer? Olivia's expression darkened slightly. Yes, I've been to their house 3 times. Darren leaned in with interest. And how were those visits? Olivia glanced at her grandmother as if seeking reassurance before answering. I didn't like it. They were always busy and left me alone in a room full of stuff, but I didn't feel happy. The courtroom fell silent. Brenda White felt her heart break hearing the tremble in her granddaughter's voice. But then, something unexpected happened. Olivia seemed to recall something, furrowed her brow, and turned directly to the judge. Can I say one more thing? The judge, surprised by the girl's determination, nodded. Of course, Olivia. Olivia pointed at Austin and Jennifer. When I was at their house, I heard them say they didn't care if I was sad. They just wanted to win. A murmur of disbelief filled the room. The courtroom erupted in whispers, but the judge quickly struck the gavel. Order in the courtroom! Austin and Jennifer's lawyer jumped to his feet. I object! A child's statement cannot be considered evidence of something so serious. The judge gave him a stern look. Control yourself, counselor. Darren seized the opportunity. Your Honor, I request a deeper investigation into the true motives of Olivia's uncle and aunt. The child's testimony raises serious concerns about their intentions. Jennifer, who had remained silent until now, suddenly lost her composure and shouted, This is absurd! That girl doesn't know what she's talking about. The judge frowned and addressed her firmly. I suggest you control your emotions. This court takes every word seriously, especially when it concerns a child who may be in emotional danger. Brenda White, though shaken, noticed something crucial. Jennifer and Austin were beginning to lose their composure. Their behavior was becoming increasingly erratic, which could work in her favor. Darren requested a recess to evaluate the new circumstances. As they stepped out, Brenda White hugged Olivia tightly. You are so brave, my girl. I'm so proud of you. But deep down, Brenda knew this was just the beginning. Austin and Jennifer were now furious and desperate people were capable of anything. During the recess, Jennifer and Austin huddled in a corner with their lawyer. Though they tried to maintain a professional facade, their tense faces and nervous glances betrayed their anxiety. When the hearing resumed, the judge struck the gavel. We continue. Darren Keat, do you have anything to add? Darren stood up, his expression now serious. Yes, Your Honor. During the recess, I had the opportunity to review some documents we recently obtained. They raised serious doubts about Jennifer and Austin's motives. The courtroom gasped. Austin's lawyer leaped to his feet. Objection! This is a desperate attempt to distract from the case. The judge raised her hand. Darren Keat, what are these documents? Darren stepped to the podium with a folder. These are emails and messages obtained through a court request. They reveal that the Hall's motives for obtaining custody of Olivia are not in her best interest. Brenda White held her breath. This was the moment she had been waiting for and dreading. Darren continued. Here is one of the messages dated 2 weeks ago. It states, Olivia being home will help us strengthen our image as the perfect family for securing a contract with the International Adoption Agency. A little girl always generates more sympathy. The courtroom filled with murmurs of disapproval. Jennifer and Austin's faces turned pale. Their lawyer quickly jumped to his feet. This is a violation of confidentiality. I demand that these messages be excluded from the case. The judge responded sternly, if these messages were obtained legally, they are admissible evidence. Proceed, Darren Keith. Darren nodded and continued. There is another message sent by Jennifer to an acquaintance. Olivia is just a step toward getting what we want. She's a sacrifice we can endure. Just hold on a little longer. Brenda White felt tears welling up in her eyes. Her granddaughter, her little Olivia, was nothing more than a tool to these people. Darren placed a folder on the judge's desk and addressed the courtroom. This case is not about who has more money or a nicer home. It's about who truly loves and cares for this child. These messages clearly demonstrate the priorities of Ms. Jennifer, and Mr. Austin. Jennifer lost her composure and shouted, "This is a farce. This lawyer is twisting everything. These messages prove nothing." The judge banged her gavel, irritated by Jennifer's outburst. "Silence. If you disrupt the proceedings again, I will have you removed from the courtroom." Austin tried to calm her down, but it was too late. The carefully crafted facade they had maintained throughout the trial was beginning to crack. The judge turned to Darren. "Do you have anything else to add?" Darren nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. I would like to call the social worker assigned to this case to share her observations about Olivia's time in the Hall household." Austin and Jennifer's lawyer attempted to object, but the judge ignored him. A few minutes later, a professional-looking middle-aged woman entered the courtroom. She took an oath to tell the truth and sat in the witness stand. "Ms. Brown, you visited the Hall household during the initial evaluation. Can you tell us what you observed?" Darren asked. Amanda Brown shifted uncomfortably. "Yes, I visited their home 3 times. During my first visit, I noticed that Olivia was locked in a room while Mr. and Mrs. Hall held a meeting. When I asked why she wasn't with them, I was told they needed privacy." Brenda White tightly squeezed Darren's hand. The truth was finally coming to light. "During my second visit, I noticed that Olivia had become more withdrawn. When I tried speaking to her, she didn't respond. The Halls told me it was because she wasn't used to being around successful people like them." The courtroom erupted into hushed murmurs of outrage. "In my report, I concluded that the environment in their home did not seem suitable for the emotional well-being of a child. However, I faced pressure to soften my assessment in the official document." Darren asked directly, "And where did this pressure come from?" The social worker took a deep breath. "From the Hall's lawyer." A stunned silence fell over the courtroom, followed by a wave of murmurs. The judge raised her hand, demanding order, and turned back to the social worker. "Can you confirm your statement? Do you have evidence?" The social worker nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. I have WhatsApp messages where I was pressured to alter my report." The judge leaned back in her chair, deep in thought. Finally, she declared, "We will take a recess to review this new evidence. I want to make it clear that any attempts to manipulate these proceedings will be severely punished." Brenda White hugged Olivia tightly as the courtroom emptied. She felt that the truth was finally on her side, but she knew the battle was far from over. Austin and Jennifer were not going to give up without a fight. During the break, the Halls stood apart, whispering intensely with their lawyer. Their tense faces and nervous gestures betrayed their anxiety. Meanwhile, Brenda took the opportunity to comfort Olivia, who looked exhausted from everything that was happening. Darren meticulously reviewed the evidence, knowing that Austin and Jennifer's counterattack could be especially ruthless. When the hearing resumed, the judge announced, "I have reviewed the submitted documents, and they do indeed reveal a new aspect of this case. However, to ensure fairness, I will allow Jennifer and Austin to explain themselves." Their lawyer stood up, nervously adjusting his tie. "Your Honor, I want to emphasize that my clients have been subjected to unjust attacks on their reputation. The presented evidence may have been taken out of context. The opposing side's interpretations are, at best, speculative." The judge interrupted with a sharp look. "Is it true that you tried to pressure the social worker into altering her report?" The lawyer hesitated for a fraction of a second. "Your Honor, that is a completely false accusation. My communication with the social worker was limited to requests for clarification to ensure transparency in the process." "Can you prove that?" the judge asked. "Of course," he replied. "I have messages that confirm my version of events." The judge ordered the phone to be handed over for review. However, her keen eyes had already noticed his hesitation. Brenda White watched from her seat, her heart pounding. She knew the truth was on her side, but she also understood that Austin and Jennifer, along with their lawyer, were clever and might try to turn the case in their favor. When the judge gave Jennifer and Austin the floor, Jennifer spoke first. "Your Honor, this is slander. We are simply trying to give Olivia a better future." Brenda White, with her age and limited resources, cannot provide that. Austin added, "That's right. All these accusations are just a distraction from the fact that Olivia needs stability and development, which we can offer her." Darren calmly interjected, "Then can you explain why your messages discuss using Olivia to strengthen your reputation in international affairs?" Jennifer frowned, trying to maintain her composure. "Those words were taken out of context. What we meant was that we are trying to create a stable family so that Olivia feels safe." "And what did you mean by the word sacrifice?" Darren asked bluntly. Jennifer glanced at the lawyer, hoping for his help, but he avoided her gaze. She forced out, "We meant that this is a life-changing decision for us." The judge watched her reaction closely. "You will have to prove your words with facts. This court does not accept baseless statements." With each new question, Darren pushed Jennifer and Austin closer to the edge. Their confidence was visibly fading. Then Darren decided to play one of his key cards. "Your Honor, I request permission to present a testimony recording from someone who worked in Claudia and Austin's house and is familiar with their family dynamics." The judge nodded with interest. "Permission granted." Darren played the recording. On the screen appeared a woman in her early 30s, wearing a housekeeper's uniform. Her face showed a mix of fear and determination. "My name is Jeanette. I worked as a housemaid in the Hall household for about 6 months. I want to share what I witnessed during that time." Jennifer turned pale and jumped up from her seat. "This is a personal attack. This woman was fired for incompetence, and now she's seeking revenge." The judge shot her a stern look. "We will hear the testimony regardless. Sit down." In the recording, Jeanette described how Olivia was often ignored and left alone for long hours. She was seen as a burden rather than part of the family. "One day I overheard Jennifer saying she didn't understand why they even took custody of the girl because she lacked the patience for children." The courtroom fell silent. Brenda White felt her heart being torn apart by anger and pain. Jennifer lost control again and slammed the table. "This is a lie. That woman is just trying to ruin our reputation." The judge banged her gavel. "Your tone and behavior are undermining your own position in this case." The recording continued. Jeanette explained that she eventually decided to quit because she could no longer tolerate how Olivia was treated. "I wasn't paid for my last month of work, but I don't care. I just want the girl to be in a place where she is loved." When the recording ended, the judge announced that the hearing would be adjourned until the next day. Jennifer and Austin quickly left the courtroom, whispering to their lawyer. Their faces were a mix of rage and fear. The visibly worried lawyer tried to calm them down, but his efforts were in vain. Meanwhile, Brenda White tightly hugged Olivia, who sat quietly next to her, nestled in her grandmother's arms. Darren approached them. "We've made a major breakthrough, but we must stay vigilant. They are clearly planning something." Brenda White nodded, looking at Darren with gratitude. "Thank you for being on our side. I couldn't do this without you." At the same time, in a private room, Jennifer and Austin were discussing their next move. Jennifer paced back and forth, clenching her fists. "We can't let this happen. If we sit back, that old woman will win." Austin, however, remained calmer. "You want to act recklessly again? We are already losing ground because of your temper." Jennifer abruptly stopped and turned to him. "If you're not willing to fight, I'll do it myself." "Calm down," their lawyer intervened. "We can still discredit Maria's testimony. If we can prove she had conflicts at previous jobs, her statement can be dismissed." Jennifer gave a cold smile. "Do whatever it takes. We cannot lose." Meanwhile, Darren received an urgent call. It was Jeanette, the nanny who had provided key testimony. Her voice was trembling. "Darren, I think I'm being followed." "Are you sure?" he asked, growing alert. "Yes, I've noticed the same car parked near my house for several days. And yesterday, someone knocked on my door, but when I looked outside, no one was there." Darren frowned. "Don't leave your house alone and avoid unnecessary contact. I'll take care of this." He immediately informed Brenda White. "It looks like they are trying to intimidate Jeanette. This confirms they're desperate, but it also makes them even more dangerous." Brenda White asked worriedly, "What should we do?" "I will report this to the court. If we can prove witness tampering, it will severely damage their position." That night was a restless one for Brenda White. She tried to stay calm for Olivia's sake, but her mind was racing with worry. Sensing the tension, Olivia approached her grandmother. "Grandma, I want to tell you something." Brenda White put her things aside and sat next to her. "Of course, my dear. What is it?" Lowering her eyes, Olivia whispered, "Aunt Jennifer told me that if I don't want to live with them, something bad might happen to you." Brenda White felt an icy chill run through her body. "When did she tell you this?" "In the park," the little girl whispered. "She said you're old and won't be able to take care of me for long. And if I don't help her, I'll be left all alone." Brenda White hugged her granddaughter tightly, holding back tears. "Don't be afraid, my sweet girl. Nothing bad will happen to us, I promise." But inside, Brenda White was boiling with rage. She knew she had to act fast. The next morning, she informed Darren, who immediately included this incident in the case. "This isn't just manipulation, Brenda. This is emotional abuse. The judge needs to know." When the hearing resumed, Darren made a statement. "Your Honor, we have received alarming information. Jennifer Hall attempted to exert psychological pressure on Olivia by threatening her grandmother. Moreover, there is reason to believe one of our witnesses is being intimidated." The judge frowned and turned to Jennifer and Austin. "Do you have anything to say about this?" Jennifer's lawyer quickly spoke up. "These accusations are baseless. My clients have always acted strictly within the law." But Darren continued. "We have a recording of Olivia's conversation with her grandmother, where the girl recounts her aunt's threats. With your permission, I can present it." The judge nodded. When the recording was played, Olivia's voice, filled with fear and innocence, made the entire courtroom freeze. Jennifer jumped up, furious. "This is a lie! That girl has been turned against us!" The judge struck her gavel. "One more outburst and I will remove you from the courtroom." Tension filled the room. The judge turned to Darren. "This is a serious allegation. We will launch an investigation, but I need additional evidence regarding the threats to your witness." "I am working on it, Your Honor," Darren replied. Jennifer's lawyer abruptly stood up. "We need a 5-minute recess." "Granted," the judge responded. Outside the courtroom, Austin, trying to hide his nervousness, dialed a number on his phone. "I need you to take care of any threats to our case. Do it quickly." Jennifer, watching him, asked with concern, "Who are you talking to?" "Someone who will help us clean up this mess," he replied with a grim smirk. Meanwhile, in her apartment, Jeanette felt her fear growing. She had drawn the curtains tightly, trying to shake the feeling of being watched. Every noise in the hallway echoed in her mind. When she heard footsteps outside her door, she grabbed her phone and cautiously peeked through the peephole. There was no one there. Returning to the living room, she heard someone carefully trying to turn the door handle. Her heart pounded. She immediately called Darren. "Darren, someone is trying to break into my home." "Call the police immediately," he instructed. The door shook from stronger attempts, but soon everything went silent. When the police arrived, the intruder was already gone. Shaking, Jeanette explained everything that had happened. The officers inspected the area but found no signs of forced entry. With trembling hands, she called Darren again. "Darren, the police came, but they didn't find anyone. They say there's no evidence of a break-in." Darren thought for a moment. "Are you okay, Jeanette?" "Yes, but I'm scared," she admitted. "Then here's what we'll do," he said firmly. "I'll ask the police to escort you to court. You need to testify. This could change everything." Jeanette agreed. An hour later, she entered the courtroom, escorted by 2 police officers. Her pale face and shaking hands caught everyone's attention. The judge looked at her closely. "Are you ready to testify?" "Yes, Your Honor," she answered, taking the stand. "What happened?" Jeanette began to speak, trying to steady her nerves. "Ever since I testified against the Hall family, I've been followed. I saw a car parked outside my house for several days in a row, and today someone tried to break into my apartment. I called the police, but by the time they arrived, the intruder was already gone." The courtroom fell silent as Jeanette continued. "I have no proof that this is connected to the Halls. Maybe it's just a coincidence. Or maybe they're trying to eliminate witnesses." Jennifer jumped to her feet. "Absurd! They're trying to frame us. Where's the proof that it was us?" The judge banged her gavel. "I ask for order in the courtroom." "She's just laughing while setting us up," Austin added through clenched teeth. "We will note the statement in the record," the judge replied, "but without concrete evidence, it remains an allegation." Darren stood up. "Your Honor, I insist on continuing the investigation. These threats cannot be ignored." The judge nodded. We will proceed with the hearing. Once the tension in the courtroom had somewhat subsided, the Hall family's attorney stood up. Your Honor, we have additional evidence that raises concerns about Brenda White's ability to care for her granddaughter. The judge frowned. What evidence? The attorney pulled out a folder and began speaking. We have discovered that Brenda White has significant overdue loans. The total debt exceeds the value of her home. This means that in the near future, her house could be repossessed. Brenda White turned pale. Her eyes welled up with tears. That's not true. Where did you get this information? I cannot disclose my source, but the data is legitimate, the attorney said confidently. Darren sprang from his seat. This is a violation of the law. A client's financial information is confidential. You had no right to reveal it. The judge gave the attorney a stern look. This is a serious allegation. If it turns out that this information was obtained illegally, the consequences for you will be severe. However, the judge also recognized that the financial stability of Brenda White had now become a central issue in the case. Suddenly, Darren declared, Your Honor, I am willing to pay off Brenda White's debts in full to remove this concern. Brenda stared at him in shock. Darren, stop! You don't have to do this. This is necessary to protect Olivia, he responded firmly. The judge nodded, surprised, but acknowledged his statement. With all arguments presented, the judge gave Olivia the final word. The little girl slowly stood up, looking at her grandmother, who gave her an encouraging smile. Taking a deep breath, Olivia turned to the judge. My name is Olivia, as you already know, she began in a quiet but clear voice. I'm 7 years old and I want to tell you about my life. She hesitated for a moment, then continued. My grandma is the closest person to me. When I'm scared, she hugs me and tells me everything will be okay. She tells me stories about my mom and dad so I can remember them. When I cry, she sits with me and sings my favorite songs until I feel better. Olivia glanced at Austin and Jennifer, and her voice trembled. When I was with my uncle and aunt, they left me alone. Their house had lots of toys, but I still felt sad. They never asked me what I liked or how I felt. She turned back to the judge, her eyes filled with tears. But with Grandma, I don't need lots of toys. I just need her to be with me. She always knows how to help me. Olivia wiped away her tears, but her voice grew stronger. Money and big houses don't make people happy. I want to be with someone who loves me, and my grandma loves me more than anything in the world. She turned to her grandmother. She never gives up on me, even when things are hard. The courtroom was filled with silence, broken only by the sound of quiet sobs. Even the usually stern judge looked deeply moved. Please let me stay with my grandma, Olivia finished. Tears shimmered in her eyes. I don't want to be with people who don't love me. She stepped down and ran into Brenda White's arms. Her heartfelt words had left an unforgettable impression on everyone in the room. This speech became the turning point that changed everything. An hour later, the judge returned to the courtroom. Everyone held their breath in anticipation. After thoroughly reviewing all evidence, hearing testimonies, and considering all circumstances, I have made my decision. She took a brief pause. Olivia will remain with her grandmother. Mrs. Brenda White applause erupted throughout the courtroom. Olivia threw her arms around her grandmother, crying tears of joy. Jennifer and Austin, accompanied by police officers, were escorted out of the courtroom. The judge also ordered a criminal case to be opened against them for manipulation and misconduct. Later that evening, Brenda, Olivia, and Darren celebrated their small but significant victory. Olivia smiled for the first time in a long while as she hugged her grandmother. Will everything be okay now, Grandma? The little girl asked. Yes, my dear, Brenda White replied, holding back tears. Now, everything will be just fine. After the trial, Brenda and Olivia's life slowly returned to normal. Despite her age, Brenda was determined to give her granddaughter everything she needed. She enrolled Olivia in a local school, where she quickly made new friends. In the evenings, they read books together and baked pies in the kitchen. Darren visited them every month, becoming a close family friend. He continued his work as a lawyer, but after this case, he felt like he had helped more than just a client. He had helped his second family. Jennifer and Austin faced trial for fraud, threats, and financial crimes. Their assets were seized and their reputation was destroyed. One evening, sitting by the window with a cup of tea, Brenda looked at Olivia, who was on the floor coloring a picture. Grandma, look, Olivia said, holding up her drawing. It showed herself, her grandmother, and Darren standing under a bright sun with a rainbow in the corner. It's beautiful, my dear, Brenda said with a smile. Now everything will be okay. And indeed, a future filled with love, warmth, and happiness awaited them. Thank you for listening to this story until the end. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to the channel and share this video with your friends and loved ones. It motivates us to keep working on new stories every day. Don't miss the next amazing story coming to your screen soon. We truly appreciate having you with us. You can find the full catalog of our stories in the description below. See you soon.